In the message, we talked about Psalm 88. The psalm speaks to the season of darkness, a season that many of us might find ourselves in, though we don't want to be in it, a season that's filled with questions and with no answers, a time in which God seems to not be present, a time in which his voice seems null and void. As we look at the psalm, as we looked at the things that the psalmist was doing, the postures that the psalmist was taking on, we can take on some things as well. For instance, the psalmist was authentic and genuine about the place that they were in. They owned the space, they owned the season. Though it was hard, and though it can be hard to own those feelings, the psalmist kind of gives us the example of how we can be genuine about that. Another thing the psalmist did was the psalmist had a posture of openness. As they owned the things that were going on in their life, they also had a genuine desire to want to be in communion with God. Even though God was the one that was being distant and quiet, God was still the one that they wanted to turn to and ask and look for things from them. The psalmist continued to turn to God. Amidst the things that the psalmist was walking through, amidst the things that were going on, they still had a genuine want to communicate with God, kept turning and asking, Lord, Lord, Lord. The other thing that the psalmist did that really can lean into is that they leaned into the darkness. They embraced the darkness. Darkness was their friend. Not the way that we typically think a psalm to end, but that was the way it ended. It ended in such a way that said, God, if you have me in darkness, then darkness is my friend. So some questions that we can take away with us for this week. For instance, we can ask, how do we respond to seasons of darkness? Another question we can ask, how are we as a group walking through darkness? For instance, how do we do with the postures that we're encountering? How do we deal with openness with each other? Another way is we can ask, how can we walk more authentically with each other through the darkness?